Over the last 2 years, we've seen an increase in the rise of heavy-handed two-tier policing. We've seen that on the streets of London. We've also seen that in Ireland as the government has embarked upon a program of mass immigration against the wishes of local people. And we've seen some very disturbing scenes in Ireland, including this weekend. Now, here on the show to talk about this is Eoin Lenihan, who is an independent journalist who has contributed to many outlets: Al Jazeera, Fox News, The Federalist, The Daily Caller, and many others. Eoin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Great to have you on. Now, we've seen what's been happening this weekend in Newton Mount Kennedy. It's a small town. I think most people in the UK have never heard of that before, but scenes have burst out there because of what the government is doing. We've seen horrendous brutality by the police. I mean, can you say a little bit more about what's going on there in that particular place? And is that endemic of what's happening all over Ireland at the moment?
Yes, since March 14th, there has been a small gathering of locals in the community who, once they found out that government were planning to bring in set up a migrant center in a disused building there, for they claim 160 migrants. Locals came together and said, we don't want this here in our community. And I can give you background on some other concerns in a moment, but just to what's gotten us to today, I'll focus on that. So those protests went off without a glitch, no problem, for the past number of weeks. Now, as the date has come closer to move in these migrants, we've seen a much more heavy-handed police presence. It all went south late last week when riot police, public order unit were brought in, and they pepper sprayed and clashed with the locals who were there. They even pepper sprayed Fatima Gunning, who is a well-respected journalist with Gript Media. So this came as a shock, I suppose, to many casual observers, but to some who have been following this for the past number of months, it's not. Increasingly, the days of the country Bobby are gone. You know, I think we saw throughout COVID that there was this new form of policing that was being introduced. You saw it in the UK, perhaps. I certainly saw it covering COVID in Germany and in Ireland, whereby this is very much an enforcement arm of the government. A lot of people were surprised that there's no talking, there's no arguing here. It was very brutal, and they were given orders to police late last week to shut down these protesters, break it up, frighten them, and let's push through with this immigration center.
So,
now,
I mean, how to carry on? Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, just to put that in context for you, this is not the first time this has happened. In Roscrea, County Tipperary, at the start of 2024, there was similar scenes where another migrant centre was being forced on a community when natives, locals, showed up to protest that. Again, heavily armed riot police scuffled with the crowd. And again, we had women being harmed, hurt, as at Newtown Mount Kennedy this week. The wider issue here is that since this November of last year, there's been 23 proposed migrant centres which have been damaged through fire or whatever else. The question is, what on earth has caused this tension? And it's quite simple. It's governmental bullheadedness. They've badly mismanaged mass migration over the past number of years. It's taken in way too many. Ireland has come to be seen as a soft touch for illegal migrants posing as economic migrants, and for economic migrants who are, of course, very welcome. But it's the word is out, and the government is struggling to place all of these individuals. And so they're just ramming them into small, tight-knit communities. There is no consultation process. Often these buses of migrants show up at night into these communities. And of course, there's fears in these local communities. In many cases, this represents a 50% increase in the population in these small areas,
Mm.
and people are nervous. They have no idea what's going to happen.
So why is there a sudden influx of migrants, economic migrants from yeah, Africa, Middle East, and so on, that you haven't seen in Ireland before? I mean, the UK is
Yeah.
quite used to migration. We've had it since the Windrush first came over in 1948. France is used to a lot of migration, but this is really new in Ireland. I mean, I think until 2 or 3 years ago, it was a very, very homogenous society. So what's going on with this?
You're absolutely correct. Ireland, if you go back 20 years ago, you know it. Anyone who's come from Britain to Ireland on holidays knows it. It was one of the most homogenous countries in Europe. The rate of change has been extraordinary. And again, it comes down in a large part to the government economic model since the boom years of the mid zero zeros, the Celtic Tiger years, was a 12.5% corporation tax. Ireland had the lowest corporation tax, and that attracted American, mainly multinationals. So what that saw was that through legal migration, just to fill these new positions that were created by this tax break, Ireland by 2022 had 1 in 5 people born outside of the state. So Ireland's a population now of just over 5 million people, and just over 1 million of those, now it's edged up to 22%, are born overseas. So it's this economic boom has caused this, but along with this economic boom and this great wealth, as I say, Ireland has come to be seen as a soft touch also for those who maybe don't have the skills required by the economy, whatever way you want to look at it, that a lot of illegal immigration and a lot of economic migrants posing as economic immigrants are trying to get into the country. But the problem is we have a government who is absolutely naive in a number of ways. First, as you correctly pointed out, Britain has dealt with this for decades. France and Germany have. So the first mistake this government made was that as it's allowed in masses of migrants, refugees, international protection migrants, they have made the exact same mistakes that all of these European nations did. That is, they're gathering them in groups of similar ethnicities or religion, and they're just dropping them into these small communities where there will never be an incentive to integrate with the local community. And it's not possible even for those who want to. We've seen how generationally this has been a huge problem in Britain, in Germany, Netherlands, France, Belgium, and so on. And this is very difficult for a lot of people to understand how the Irish government has not learned from this. Another problem is that we have a massive NGO sector here in Ireland. There's over 33,000, difficult for an Irishman to say, 33,000 NGOs, and they're funded to the tune of €5 billion per year by the government. So they're not really NGOs, let's be honest. So they're funded to the tune of 5 billion. And these are a massive pressure groups. And so this government is particularly susceptible to these. And that's another reason that we're seeing a massive influx and protection. And importantly, we're not seeing those who come into the country illegally being deported because of this pressure. Last year, for example, we had agreements with other European nations, so third nations, to return immigrants to these nations. They willingly accepted these, but only 3 were returned out of 188 who were accepted. The year before, only 2 were returned. So there's no will amongst our politicians to take a hold of our migration system. Just this morning, there's a bit of a kerfuffle brewing between Britain and Ireland because of the number of migrants now crossing the border into Ireland from Northern Ireland because of your Rwanda program, which fair dues to Britain, taking control of their borders. But again, everybody knows Ireland is a soft touch. So what's happening? All of these illegals from Britain are hopping over to Belfast, taking bus, train, taxi down to Dublin, where they know they're going to be able to claim asylum and they're not going to be removed. Now, you have up to 1.5 million illegals, something close to this number in the UK. If only a fraction of them decide to come to Ireland, where we have no political will to remove them, the system's going to collapse. It's going to be chaos because, as we've seen with Newtown Mount Kennedy, we're already at boiling point.
Well, I mean, there is a common travel zone with the UK and Republic of Ireland, isn't there? So there's no border checks. There
Correct.
should be border checks between Britain and France, and Ireland and France. I guess if people come
Yeah.
across the channel on the boats, and I would say I don't think the Rwanda scheme is doing anything to stop the number of boats coming across the channel. So once they're
Right.
in the UK, they have freedom of movement throughout the UK and also to the Republic of Ireland as
Right.
well. So. I think
Right.
that's probably something that's
We'll be
been
the
going on for
dumping
a few
ground.
years.
We'll be the dumping ground through political softness, essentially.
Mm. But I mean, are there any political parties that do want to get a grip on this? I mean, I guess the main parties, what is it? I'll probably pronounce them right wrong, but Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, is that right? And Sinn
Very
Féin,
good.
are
Yeah.
the Sinn Féin has come up a lot in the last few years, hasn't it? Are they all acting together to support this migration program?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Sinn Féin are now the largest party in Ireland. They won the largest amount of seats last time out, projected to do so in the next general election next year. But the problem is the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are traditionally, we don't have a proper conservative party in Ireland, never really did, but they were considered to be centre right. But their open borders policy have been hard
Mm.
left, and the biggest problem is the Sinn Féin are a socialist party. What these guys are doing now, they'll do on steroids. So this is a big part of the problem. It's a crippled democracy. We don't actually have any of the big three parties willing to stop what's happening. Now, as you said, thankfully, there are some green shoots out there that we've seen parties like the Irish Freedom Party with Herman Kelly who have popped up.
Yeah.
He's been very vocal on this, doing very good work. We're seeing Independent Ireland, another group, a collection of independent parliamentarians, so TDs, who are coming together. And we're seeing a number of other populist and nationalist parties, smaller ones. But the green shoots are there. The question is, can they get a foot in the door quickly enough? Because this is absolutely time sensitive here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe you have EU elections. We don't have them in the UK anymore, but there are European Parliament elections in a few months, aren't there? Do you think anything might happen there to change anything?
This is very interesting. The Euro elections and local elections are going to happen on the same day. It's the 7th of June, I believe. And the local elections are being seen by many as a bellwether, perhaps, for the upcoming general election. Are the big three parties going to get a kicking? Because traditionally the problem has been that people have gone from without an option to go Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. But this is the time to see, will Irish people break outside of that the traditional Civil War party patterns, and will they vote for new voices? The European elections also have a very healthy representation of alternative party members. The most exciting is Niall Boylan, who's a very famous radio personality here in Ireland. He just declared last week in Dublin, and he's been seen as one of the hot favourites to break through the big three.
That's good. I mean, I wish them all well. I hope that you do have a change in politics because, I'm looking across the Irish Channel of what's happening there with the huge problems that is creating this immigration. And it's terrible for the local communities. It's terrible because there's not the infrastructure to deal with it. I think you're going to have the same problems in Ireland as we have all over the UK, especially England, where there's not enough GP surgeries, there's not enough housing, there's increasing crime and all these other things. Anyway, we're coming towards the end of the show, but Eoin, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this issue. And I hope that you do have some change in the political situation in Ireland over the next year or so. It's a time sensitive, as you say. Got to do something about this now, otherwise it's not gonna end.